There's Magdala. Good morning, everybody. There's the little white house in the center of the screen. The synagogue, Magdala, the mountains bordering Lebanon. In that direction, straight to the center, is Mount Hermon. Across to Syria. And if we get to the corner here, we might spy Jordan. Here, this is often tread by the cows. And they have their little path along here. And all the traffic, all the stones are kicked up. So you have lots of stones here to watch where you walk. What I want to do is I want to go down here, and maybe somebody can already guess the reason. I want to show you some stuff that's here, historical stuff. There we can see Jordan down at the very end. And here in the closer to us is the city of Tiberias. Herod the Tetrarch made it capital of Galilee in the year 19. But Magdala, prior to that, was the flourishing town right here. Some people say that Herod couldn't build the capital here because he'd have had the, over here, all along here, because he'd have had the advantage of the defense of the mountain and so on, and the lake, but there wasn't enough space to grow because it was swampland beyond that, unpredictable with water. So there was no space to expand here. So that's why he started a new spot about a mile south of those high rises in Tiberias today. So the reason we're here is I want to get this stone down here. Maybe some people remember from the 2nd of November last year how we come here. I have this lone little bird here up in the wire flying away. Figured that I was aiming at her with just a camera, not a gun. We also have the moon up there over on the right of the screen. So let's get down here. So on the 2nd of November, it's a very widespread custom for over a millennium in a liturgical fashion to pray systematically for all the deceased. And I don't know anybody yet in history by name and location on the map that has not yet died. So let's go back 200 years. I don't know anybody who is still alive. But if we go back 120 years, the ranks thin very significantly. Maybe we'll find some between 100 and 120 still alive today. Like a year or two ago, that French nun died. She was the oldest woman, the oldest person in the world. And then how human beings have related to people who died. And there are huge studies and presentations done about that, because it's a very major dimension of life that puts an end to our lives. So here we have 2 burial chambers for 2 adults, presumably a husband and wife. Remains of burial space. And when somebody dies, we call it remains. The remains were removed and buried. Maybe there's a ceremony involved. And so we even have remains of the tombs that held the remains of the people. So I want to walk along here because we actually have a lot of that along here. In fact, from here, maybe a little bit further over here, and down the next couple of 100 yards was a major cemetery in the Roman period. So the time of the Second Temple. And these burial features are I'm just looking for some right now because they're in different spots. These burial features are indicative of a prosperous, wealthy community that could afford to take such care of the deceased. So here in front of me we have another one. And there were also sarcophagi, real sarcophagi, independent of the bedrock. And they're now on display up in Mount Arbel Nature Park, up over the brow there. And they used to be over here. So they brought them there so they could be on display. And there are more as we go. And now as we go, we are pondering the theme of death. And the 2nd of November is simply a traditional date. It falls after the Feast of All Saints, all those in glory. And then not all die as martyrs, and not all die in the reputation of holiness of life. And so there's great love for the deceased. My sister shared with me a little collection of pictures she has from my ordination. And my late parents were obviously there. And also some other friends who came, who all have passed away. And it was very touching to see those pictures. And we have great love for our deceased parents and siblings and cousins. My little cousin died when he was 6 or 7 years old from an accidental poisoning that he took by his own curiosity. It was a weed killer, unfortunately, very sad story in County Wexford. His family had my uncle's family had a little strawberry plot there. And so this is also a child's grave, or a child's burial slot here in the rock. It's that size, it's not big enough for an adult. And how we deal with death is a very interesting phenomenon anthropologically, because it reveals the longing of the heart in all different cultures. The desires of the heart, the going beyond death, remembering the dead, a mysterious realm. We could dip into the Old Testament, into the story of Saul on the night before his last battle, and he was super nervous. And we can imagine what that's like in battle, since it's so familiar to our eyes these days. And he goes to a necromancer in a place called Eindur, which is near Mount Tabor. Now we have some more phenomenon here. Look at this little stone here. And this looks like the cover of a burial spot that would be big enough for a child. It's a stone that is laid on top of that opening we have seen in the other ones. And here we have another one. And I'm not sure if it's for a child. If it finishes here at the piece you can see, or if it's bigger, if it goes on further here and was broken. And there's another one down here. I think this is a lid, a big lid for an adult burial spot. I just have to be careful here because it's a steep spot here down onto the road, and I'm here without my walking sticks, which are awkward to have with a gimbal in your other hand. Oh, there's another one. Look at right there. You can see from the size of it. But I want to head over here where we have some more interesting pieces. And Saul tries to speak to the dead prophet Samuel to get an idea what's his fate for the next day in the battle against the Philistines. So all of this is graveyard. And there's a very big stone down there that Mariana Be, a famous Galilean archaeologist, is pretty certain comes from further up, and in earthquakes or whatever it got rolled down to here. So beyond those electric pylons, all this is burial ground. So it's a very extensive burial ground with very established burial structures, which means this was a very prosperous, thriving community, which is also validated by the archaeology, the frescoes and mosaics in our synagogue, and at the ritual baths, and the way the ritual baths are so well built, and in the discovery of the second synagogue in Magdala. All of this points to a very prosperous, thriving community, very engaged in the fish processing industry. Also in the Franciscan end of the site, to the south of our site, we have a Greek gymnasium, meaning combination of education and sports, athletics, like the Greek culture favored in the time of the Maccabees. It's also very interesting, an interesting document regarding understanding of the culture around the issue of death. And so we have Judas Maccabeus taken up a collection to send to the temple in Jerusalem to pray for all the fallen Israelites who were killed in the battle with the Greeks, because every single one of them was discovered to have been carrying an amulet, which was false worship. And then he wanted to make reparation for them, to pray for them, and it's praised as being a very good thought. So here we have two adult chambers, adult-sized, and then we have a small one up there for a child. So child mortality is still an issue in our times, even in very advanced societies. A moment of great sadness in a family when a child dies, and then the need to bury the child. Very sad moments. So Mariana Be thinks this stone has come down from way up there. I don't know the exact spot. Now, if that's true, then it means that the graveyard also extended up that far. So that's also a very interesting consideration about the extent of this burial area. And then we still have more over here. So now you'll be a little expert on the burials at Magdala, but I don't claim to be an expert either, because there's a lot more to know about all of this. Here we can see more lids for those burial spots. There's one very clear one. And then we still have more over here. Look here, this one is pretty damaged. And here we have another one. And I think there are some down there. At least there are big chunks of basalt down there, square, cubic, or rectangular. So obviously man-made. There you have a little wall over there, sticking out over there. It's a bit difficult for me to walk over there. You have all these stones here, and you can see a lot of human intervention in these structures. So then when the Maccabeans have these thoughts about death, it's part of the religious development. in the early stages of biblical history, your future was limited to this earth, and the continuity was guaranteed through your children and your children's children. And that's a human phenomenon that still is valid today, in the sense that I'll never forget the moment of sadness in my father's eyes when I won't go into all the detail now, it would take too long, but he saw the potential that maybe none of us would stay at home to keep the farm, for which he had worked so hard. And it was his granduncle's farm, and it was again back a couple of generations from there. So we want to have continuity, we want things to last, to go beyond our death. But then in the contact with the living God, the God of the living, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God's people enter more and more into God's heart and become more familiar with Him. And it's like a sunrise. Early this morning, the sky was so beautiful with this little pink in these cloud forms that are there, so tenuous. And it was beautiful. It was an announcement that the sun is coming. And so as God's people grew, they started understanding that there would be a resurrection of the dead. We already have in Ezekiel, the famous chapter 37, with the dry bones rising up, and lines in the Psalms, the book of Job, all expressing this deep longing for life, for eternal life, for lasting life. And then with Jesus, there's an extraordinary turn of events. Well, just before Jesus, another very important fact in the religious life of the Jewish people, that there was a huge division in the community between Pharisees and Sadducees. And Sadducees rejected all the idea of the resurrection of the dead. It was a very contentious issue, which we see in the Gospels, and we see also in Paul's writings, and in his experience in Jerusalem, even his escape route was provoking a fight between the Pharisees and the Sadducees over the issue of the resurrection. And then with Jesus' resurrection, first of all, of Lazarus, that was the last one, of Martha and Mary's brother. But before that, the widow's son in Naim near Mount Tabor, and also the resurrection of the daughter of Jairus. And there are parallels to Elisha's resurrection of the child of that family that used to host him. So there's a growing understanding and awareness of resurrection. And then with Jesus' resurrection, it's a whole new level. And we will not be confined to our tombs. We will be brought out. We will rise. And this is the Christian perspective. It's in dialogue with all other perspectives about life and death today. And one thing that unites all of us, no matter what creed we have or no creed, is that we will all die. And that fatality is a very big challenge for humanity. And it's good that we have healthy conversations about it, and see each other's viewpoints, and be able to understand and explain how we see death and how we see life. And one thing that we should be motivated is to reduce the attack on life by so many that happens today. So many attacks on life in all stages of life. The sacredness of life, and especially from a Christian perspective, that life is eternal, that life is for eternal glory, then we need to have extraordinary respect for life and promote that with all people who may have different opinions and different insights, different ways of seeing it. And who knows if we'll be here together next year. I've done this little coverage now since the live stream started, I think every year. One year was in Jerusalem, in the cemetery there, Muslims, Christians, and And Jews are all buried in the same area in 3 different sections of the Valley of Jehoshaphat. And let us prepare to live a good life. Let us prepare to respect life, to teach the great respect for life, and also the great respect before the mystery of death, the opening to eternal life. There's so many more thoughts, people. This is just touching the surface, scratching the surface. So I wish you many blessings today, and many in every way. See you later, alligators, at the latest in heaven.